for Think From Home with Confirm It. This is going to be a really cool day. We have today with us Ali Bichelle, who is basically a text analytics genius, text and social analytics. I don't mean to undermine. You are the genius of all that is text and social. So today is going to be a really great opportunity to pick Ali's brain and learn about some of the stuff underneath the surface, understand what the value is of text analytics, and I'm really excited. As usual, we are here with our adult beverages of choice because, you know, we're a bunch of lushes who have to drink through these things. So we put this on screen. Although Ali's better behaved than I am, I'm going with my typical Sam Adams. Ali, what you got?
I got some Wegmans brand sparkling water in my favorite, peach.
Ooh, see, a better person than I am. I totally agree with that. And my dog Thor is joining us here today as well.
Hi,
so
Thor.
Hopefully he'll control himself. But anyway, Ali, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to spend, you know, a half hour, 20 minutes, whatever it takes to go through some text analytics stuff. And I'm really excited because I think this is an important topic because, well, they got a lot of data, a lot of stuff that people can't do anything with. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if it's just sitting there unstructured data can be a bit of a challenge for people. And I've heard stats, it's like 80% of data or something like that is considered unstructured.
I've seen between 80 and 90, and it just keeps growing exponentially.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, just to set the stage so we're all on the same page, the most basic question in the world, what is text analytics and how can any insight professional benefit from text analytics?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very misunderstood kind of thing, I think. And some people think text analytics is NLP, natural language processing, but it's so much more than that. So in reality, and the purpose is, we're trying to use up all that text like you mentioned. We're trying to use it all up because it's there, it's important, it has opinion in it. No matter what the business objective is, you can use this text. So we're trying to quantify that qualitative data. It doesn't matter where it comes from. I mean, it could come from, of course, survey open ends is the one that people are most familiar with maybe, or even social posts. But it could be article abstracts. It could be transcripts. Of course, call center voice, any of that stuff. And it's just so vast. But when I think about it in terms of four things. So the first one being planning. Sorry, guys, can't get around it. You got to think about it with what you want to get out of it. Just like any other analytics or any other program, you know, think about what you need to get out of it. And not just you, but all your stakeholders. So whether that's leadership or customers or whoever needs to get these results, right? Actually, that's the hardest part of the whole thing. I'm not kidding, is getting everybody aligned on what they want to get out of it. But once that hurdle is complete, then there's two components. One is carving the topics out of the text somehow. So there are a lot of different ways to do that, many different ways. I like some better than others. And then there's attaching some kind of a score for temperature, like it's called sentiment, right? So those two things together, it goes so far beyond just natural language processing. And then finally, you got to have a great way to analyze it, because with all that data, what's the point unless you can get some insight out of it?
Right. Interesting. So before I go on to the next question, though, before the call, while we were sort of in our little waiting room, before we pressed go live, you introduced me to a little friend you have hiding in the background there. I want to see this.
Okay. I actually have two friends. I'll bring one. This is called my reality shark.
Okay.
And yeah. So
I love it.
It's my 6-year-old daughter's puppet. Oops. And when I don't like something,
he roars.
He crunches it. So
I love it.
We got one of those around for whenever somebody gets, you know, upset in a meeting. We bring out one of the sharks.
Okay.
They can even, there's a hammerhead here.
And a hammerhead.
This guy, I think your battery went, guy. Daughter, if you're watching this, sorry, we got to put a new battery in that.
So thank you. I figured we needed to introduce all of the guests. Thor got introduced, so the sharks needed to be brought on. And
Thank
perhaps
you.
that's the alcohol talking. I was also telling Allie before we got on today that Confirm It actually had a company-wide global happy hour today. And of course, to make it global, because we have people in Europe and so on and so forth, they're as global as we can. Australia, of course, it is the middle of the night, so we couldn't have them on. But to accommodate the Europeans and all of the US, we had it at 11 o'clock today. So this is my second beer of the day. And yes, I started drinking in the morning, and I'm proud of it still.
Nice. I'm impressed.
But we did justify it. One of my colleagues in Sweden said, "Hey, it's 5 o'clock here." So we had that 5 o'clock somewhere covered.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
knew exactly where it was. But back to the topic at hand. So with text analytics, just curious, can you give us a little simple explanation of how text analytics works? I think some people might think it's kind of scary. How does the whole thing work in the simplest terms?
All right. So a little earlier, you heard me say NLP, which is natural language processing. And then there's an acronym you'll hear more often called NLU, which is natural language understanding. So in the very most basic sense, it has to be a computer, really, to break up that text in ways that then we can quantify it and analyze it. So that there's just a lot of different ways we can do that now. But just keep an eye out for how much control you have as a human being, because there are a lot of AI ways to analyze text, and it's really cool. And, we have some of those too, but it can't be aligned to your business unless you have a human being, somebody internal, somebody external, some of your stakeholders that have control over how to analyze that, what the outcomes will be. And people almost, my past clients that have come to us saying, we loved the AI portion of this thing we were using, but we have real trouble when it comes to making it actionable. And it's kind of sad, because that means that they've struggled with that for their contractor or whatever, and then they have to come back to get help. But it's just important to know. So that's why I'm telling you, AI can't do it on its own. Cannot. So maybe, I don't know, 20 years, maybe? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It'll come.
Yeah.
What about, I always was under the impression that there was black magic involved. Is this not part of the process?
We call it automagic. And
I like
automagic. Yeah. So really there is somewhat of some magic if you're getting into some neural networking analysis. I'm not your methodologist, but it's just as amazing to me in that it can identify concepts by understanding the connections in the text instead of the words. Hello, what?
That's cool.
That's automagic. And the other part of automagic is really not magic at all, which is just automating it. And so while you hear all these things, sometimes an article will focus in on one technology and talk about Python and R. Do I have to need to understand these things? But just keep in mind, it's another way to analyze data. So make sure you get education. If you're embarking on this, Google the heck out of it first. And then ask, the pros. Say, hey, do you have any training materials or something that can put this into perspective for what I want to do? And, rely on others. They've been there.
Gotcha. So in the beginning, you listed off a couple of different types of data. I wonder if we can dive a little bit more into that. What types of data you need, how much data you need. And I think there's definitely some thoughts around that too, that if you don't have a sufficient amount of data, it just goes bust. But what is that? What is a sufficient amount of data?
Right. So it's funny, because once some of my clients have a taste of this, they want to throw everything in it. And, it's really great in one sense, but then they might have, less than 100 verbatim or posts or mentions or sentences or something, and they're wondering, we really want to but does it make sense to you? So there's kind of two paths here. One is, I have a lot of data, and what else do I put in there? And the other one is, where do I start? So when you're starting, it's good to have a nice base of data so that you can build what we call a categorization model, which is the way, it's a framework, an outline, like a file folder system that has multiple levels in it of the topics. And it doesn't really make sense to have that way to organize all your data if there are only 100 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some upfront work on it. So think of it this way. Look at your open ends, your data, your mentions, wherever they came from, and say to yourself, can I read this and synthesize it in my brain and say something about it without a computer? If that's a yes, there's no sense really in doing text analytics for a one-time thing. What if it's a tracker, though? That's another story. What if it's something that happens every period of time and you basically get this, even if the question changes or the motive changes? Yes, it probably would make sense if you need to do something over and over, because there's a part planning where you set up the data that has to happen first. And if that's a lot of work it doesn't really make sense to do it for a small chunk of data. I think that might be one of the misunderstandings.
Yeah. But then at the same time, for some organizations, they're going to have lots of data and lots of sources, I would imagine, because you had lifted off a couple that it can be, not just survey verbatims, which I think is another thing where perhaps people get a little stuck thinking it's just the survey. And this goes way beyond the survey. This can be your internal stuff, your internal documents and emails, social media, which is a beast.
Huge.
There's so much stuff on social media. So I think, for when it's warranted, of course, it's not warranted for every study, but in general, the possibilities for, where that text or that unstructured data is coming from is absolutely massive. Again,
it's
when it's
huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Other things to consider is, although that text data is called unstructured, I and my colleagues kind of challenge that look at it because it's really semi-structured.
Really?
It's not. Yeah, right. So, okay, think of it this way. In a book, it's got chapters, it's got pages, it's got titles, it's got paragraphs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a good writer will kind of draw you in at the beginning, in the first couple sentences, and all that are things. Those are things that you could use to identify areas of the text even before you do text analytics. So it's semi-structured. In a social media post, you have a title, you have the author, you have the page that kind of determines what type of data it is. Things from Facebook will be very much different than things from a professional blog. So it's really semi-structured. Did I just go off the rails there, or?
No, it is off the rails, but I like it. I never thought of it that way.
Thought of it that way.
Even some of this, we've called it unstructured forever, but it does have. You're right. I never considered that there is something of a structure to unstructured data. It's a very, very interesting point. Nope.
And you can use those things to, exactly. And this stuff just keeps getting better and better. I got to tell you, it's amazingly exciting. And then when you go to analyze it, there are more and more different ways of picking out just the pieces you need, as well as accounting for all the different topics that are in a chunk of text.
Yeah.
So pick what you want. We can do that. Just look for very specific things. It's kind of like an agile approach. Mm-hmm. Or tell me all the different things that are in it.
Right. And that's cool. That's cool. I was having a conversation, and this is a little off the rails as well, but I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about confirmation bias and how we tend to, nobody does it on purpose, I'm sure. Some do. They totally do. But we tend to justify our own hopes or what we want the research to say. So then there's that opportunity to let it speak for itself.
Yes.
To let it come out and just, the data will tell you, here's where the trends are, here's where the topics are. So that seems to play into this really well too, is that you get a different perspective that doesn't involve that kind of confirmation bias, so long as you're doing it right. I'm sure you can justify anything if you try.
You can find what you're looking for.
Yep.
Or you can let the data speak for itself. You're right. And that's where the AI is great, because it's got no preconceived, well, unless you tell it so, it's got no preconceived notions of what it's looking for. So then that has no confirmation bias, right? It's amazing, because here's an example. As I had a client who was looking for quick wins, right? That's a loaded thing to ask. We want some quick wins, please. We have no time to do anything, but this is real life here. And so we let the AI do its thing, and there was a nice, a small but sizable chunk, a cluster that was developed around offensive or something, hold music on the phone. Hold music. Something that had never come up before in their manual coding, and we were able to pinpoint it right away, quantify it, and say, is this a quick win? And so they made this quick change by flipping the channel on the hold music.
I'm just curious, what kind of music were they playing that was so offensive?
I got to be honest with you, I didn't ask. So
I would have been very curious to know.
Now I want to go back and ask.
Yeah. So now, what about audio? That's audio, something you mentioned in the beginning too. And audio is there's a lot of companies that are sitting on audio files. You've got the call center recordings that are just sort of piling up. You do nothing with them. People who are calling and doing their thing with the IVR, sometimes leaving messages behind or complaints. Hopefully that's not the case, but these things happen. How can a company leverage text analytics, which is text, and audio, which is not text? How does that work?
Yeah, so it started out that the only thing we were able to do was to take that voice file. First of all, wait, let's back up a little bit, because this is low-hanging fruit, people. This is huge volumes of lots of your customers, B2B, it doesn't matter, B2B, B2C, these recordings that are very little is being done with often. And a poor customer service rep, I feel you guys' pain if you're out there. They have to summarize that call. Could be a 25-minute call, and I put a little note in a note field. Don't they have enough to do? So there's a couple great things we can do these days. One of them is Acoustics. There's acoustic analytics out there. They're not fantastic, but they're pretty amazing. And I think we might have talked about this another time, but you can determine the tone. Does it improve? Does it get worse? So you can kind of get a feel for the sentiment there. This is even before text is involved. Being able to tell them, this one did not end on such a positive note. Tick mark in that box, right?
Yep.
So that could tonality change in... they can even determine, I don't know how accurate this is really, but the gender, accents, overtalk, silence, of course. That's an easy one to measure, right? When there's silence. Yeah. And then that gives you a certain amount of information that text analysis cannot give you. But then it also does not help you understand what the topics are, what topics are being discussed. And that's where text analytics comes in, and a little bit of auto magic, auto transcription, or, actually you could use human transcription, but that's kind of defeating the purpose of that automatic nature of things. So combining that text analytics with the acoustic analytics, wow, that's such a powerful combination.
It's interesting too, on a webinar I had done a while ago. It was pretty recent, I think. One of the questions I got back from the audience was, but what about when you're dealing with text analytics, what about sarcasm? And you remember, Allie, what did I do?
Yes,
I totally ran to you and said, Allie, how do I answer this person's question? And we got talking about tonal analysis and the speech analysis and the capabilities there, where maybe text analytics can't always pick up sarcasm, because if we really get down to it, if you were to send me a sarcastic email right now, I've got about a 50-50 chance of knowing you're sarcastic via email.
Yeah. And if you don't know me, right? You wouldn't,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a kind of a moot point anyway. Written sarcasm is extremely difficult to interpret, even for a human, forget a machine. But when we get into that analysis of the sounds and the tone of voice and so on and so forth, it opens up a huge opportunity to get rid of that, or at least answer that question. Are they being sarcastic? Are they being, mean or rude or whatever? So I personally think that this whole speech to text and combining it with the tonal analysis, that's just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, so remember, you need both. You need both the acoustic analysis, that's the tonal, and all the great stuff that comes with that, but you also need the text analysis to tell you what's in it, what are the topics, right, plus some other good stuff, and that'll give you a phenomenal understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic opportunity there, I think, to be able to know all that.
It's fantastic. Huge. It's huge, and it's largely untapped right now. So all you people out there who want to start a new business, consider that.
There you go. There you go. And all those businesses out there that are sitting on mounds and piles and piles of old recordings that you recorded for quality assurance that nobody has ever listened to. I could imagine getting some fantastic benchmarking data and then starting to track over time and see if you've made improvements. Changes. There's so much you could do with that data.
Right. So that actually brings up another point, and that's what to do with it all and where is that going?
Right.
So let's think about it this way. Any analytics program, any research program, you want more than just the percent of people are saying certain things. You want more than averages. So you should be able to do great things with text analytics like can be done with other types of data. So don't settle. Don't settle. So you should be able to determine root causes. You should be able to determine where's my priorities? What are the priorities of this information that's coming in? Not just loud, but loud and important, right? Mm-hmm. So because the vocal minority could get in there and make it very, very loud, but is it important?
Right.
Your analytics needs to pick that up. Also, you need to pick up, is a change over time a significant one? It should have SIG testing in it, right? I'm a big fan, I'm a market researcher, so significance testing, I'm a huge fan of. We should be able to use that, yes. Yes, trending. Yeah. Pick out the emerging trends. Yeah. Also, segment it with the rest of your data. If you're just looking at stuff overall, it's important and it's good, but that's only the first step. You need to figure out what different types of clients are saying differently than the other groups.
Excellent. So we are getting toward the end of our usual period here. It goes fast, right? But I wanna kind of ask you one thing though. What do you think is going to come next? Text, social, speech. What's next in this whole universe of text analytics and social analytics, and where are we going?
I wrote stuff down for you because there's a bunch of stuff I want you to look out for, and I don't want to miss it. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Humane. We have to keep this whole process humane. Humane analytics, humane AI. You'll be hearing that over the next couple years. What the heck is that? We need to make sure that what we're doing isn't nudging people in a non-humane direction. And I don't mean like violence or anything like that. Right. What I'm talking about is who's paying for all this? There are many, many companies who are paying for this. So when we're doing our analytics, aren't we kind of nudging them in that direction? Right. Just keep an eye on, like you said earlier, being fair, right? Fair and humane. You'll hear that coming on. Privacy issues, mostly with social. Even though people publicly post things and they know this is public, there may be upcoming issues with privacy related to that public information. Just keep an eye on it. In the US, we've been kind of lax. In Europe, not so lax, right? Yeah. Standardization, you'll be seeing a lot of cool ways to categorize that data in a standardized way. That's because we need people to get more into self-service. And if you are constantly creating things from scratch, That's a big pain. So look for
Yeah.
standardized approaches.
That makes sense.
Predictive analytics. So you hear a lot about maybe advanced analytics and predictive analytics with quantitative data. Definitely for text data.
Oh,
I'm going to
that could
pick
be
out a
really
color.
cool.
It's so fun. You know,
I
that's
love
what I
predictive
do.
analytics on the quantitative. Imagine qualitative predictive. That
Exactly,
would be
using
so
sentiment.
freaking cool.
Yes. Oh, that's why I love my job. I am not lying, folks. It is good times, lots of fun. Let's see, what else is good? Oh, think about this. Let's lower the amount of fatigue on a survey. Okay, so
Wouldn't
long
that be
surveys,
fantastic?
it's always an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We work with our clients a lot of times to cut down on the number of quantitative questions and open-ended questions in favor of some thoughtfully crafted open-ended questions that get you everything you need. I sound like a salesperson, right? I've never been a salesperson in my life, but it's true.
And it's so important because, this is something that I've talked about quite a bit as well. And obviously, I'm not as knowledgeable as you are. You are more of an expert in this area. But, as far as it goes, when you give somebody a list of tick boxes and you tell them these are the only opinions you're allowed to have. Now, tell us what your opinion is. Really?
I know.
What if my opinion is something else and you're not letting me tell you? I want to speak my mind. You say you care about my opinion and then you give me a list of 5 choices. But my opinion is number 27 and it's not on your list. That's the beauty of open ends, is that people can actually speak their mind. And sometimes I think, there's just so much opportunity to learn things that go beyond what you could have imagined.
Amazing.
By listening.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And then people get, why don't we tell them, hey, we're performing text analytics on your answer. We're really taking this seriously. Mm-hmm. Speak to me like you need to speak to me. Yeah. Right? It's unbelievable. We learned such amazing things. I'm not even going to go, emotions. Oh, people will tell you how they feel. Anyway, it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah. Very exciting stuff. Well, Allie, thank you so much. I enjoyed half of my beer during our call. I'm never really good about drinking the whole thing in a half an hour, but it's still cold, and I loved meeting your sharks. I think everybody did. I love it. And I want to thank everybody who joined us today.
Yes.
This was fantastic. You can always reach out to us if you have questions, comments, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, this is going to be on every social media known to man pretty much. So feel free to put comments and questions in the box. We'll interact with you there on social media.
Love it. Please do.
If you're on, any of the social media things, my social media people tell me that I have to say you have to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But you know the drill because you're smart and everybody tells you to do that on every video. So you know what to do. But please do like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about, if I'm remembering correctly, we're going to be talking about change management. We're having an external consultant coming on with us who is an expert in change management, specifically for customer experience programs. And I think it's going to be really interesting. She's got some really cool perspectives on how to make change happen, especially when people are difficult and don't want to change because people are comfortable, and that can be a challenge. So we'll be talking in 2 weeks about change management. So don't miss us. Same time, same places. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time as always, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care,
Allie,
guys.
thanks again.
Bye.